Hey, what's up? It's Comic 95 the Savior. So for this video, I want to give you guys some more housing advice. If you are new to my channel or semi-new and you have not already checked out my blog posts as well as my previous videos on housing, I will link them down below in the description box, and I might leave a comment with the links as well. I highly suggest that you read those blog posts and also watch those videos. They will give you more information, arguably more detailed information on housing, but I wanted to reiterate as well as add some more stuff to that. I personally get a lot of messages and emails from people asking me, where exactly should they live in Japan? So if you've gotten past your whole weeboo phase of wanting to go to Japan and being so excited about it, and you finally thought, more about living here, you probably realize that saying that you want to live in Japan is a very broad statement. Well, maybe you've narrowed that down and decided, okay, I want to live in Tokyo, which is where most people choose to live. Everyone wants to go to Tokyo, Japan. When you think of Japan, that's probably the first place and only place that most people know of in Japan that comes to mind. But Tokyo is huge. That's like saying that you want to live in New York. Okay, where in New York? New York City is gigantic. There's lots of different boroughs, lots of different areas, neighborhoods, streets, etc. If your job is all the way, I don't know, somewhere in Manhattan, you probably don't want to look for an apartment, in Staten Island. So Japan is basically the same way. If your job is, I don't know, forgot the name of the place, Kukubunji or whatever the name is, you probably don't want to have your job all the way out in Yokohama or something. That's a long commute. So it goes much further than just a matter of, wanting to live in a specific city. You want to narrow it down based off of where either your job is going to be or where your school is going to be. If you do not already know where these places are going to be, then you should not be looking for housing at all. And the reason being is your house can actually significantly hurt you. It can either make it or break it for you here in Japan. Unlike in the US, jobs will actually turn you down strictly based on your location. So of course you can debate that this is also done in the US. For example, if you're applying for a job that's in, I don't know, Ohio, and you're living in Chicago, you're probably not going to get a call back from that place. Whereas in Japan, how can I put it? The distance that they're willing to allow you to live to commute is much different. For example, I've applied to jobs that were only about 40 minutes away, and the person would literally email me back and be like, oh, we really like your resume, but sorry, we're only interested in hiring people that live in this area. And it's like, what? Like, that's just a 40-minute commute. But for them, 40 minutes is like, I don't know, 2 days is what it seems like. They act like you're commuting 10 hours or something by car. Now, mind you, in Japan, most people take public transit because it's unreasonable to drive your car. It's very expensive to both maintain and keep a car on your own personal property, and especially to find parking and do this on a day-to-day basis. Parking is expensive. Parking garages are normally nowhere near wherever you're trying to go, and the hours in which you can stay parked there are very, very limited. So it's not realistic to drive your car to work. Are there some freaks that do it? Yes. But unless you're living in the countryside and or in the middle of nowhere, this is not something that you're going to be able to do. So don't think, oh, I'm not going to take the train, I'm too good for that, or think that you're going to be able to walk to work and ride your bike. You are more than likely going to end up taking the train. Even if you are theoretically bike distance, walking distance, whatever, it's just easier, less of a hassle. Although, of course, that is an option too. But again, you want to consider the fact that your employer is not going to, assume that you'll be taking your bike, because pretty much nobody rides their bike to work. People will ride their bike to the train station, but not normally to their job, and they don't care if you have a car. That's not going to be taken into consideration. They will assume that you will be taking the train. So if you apply for a place that's not, within about 30 minutes from your home, yes, you can get the job. I'm personally working somewhere that's hours away from my house. But for most people, this is not going to happen for you. You're going to make your job hunt a lot more difficult. Whereas for students, you're going to give yourself an extra expense. If you're traveling 40 minutes to an hour or two away from your home, you're also going to be paying double if not triple the amount in train fare. If you are a college student, you can only work part-time except for in between breaks, which most companies still aren't going to give you those full-time hours. That's an extra transportation expense that you don't want to have because your school will not pay for that, unlike somebody that's working in Japan. At least your company would generally pay up to about $150 or $1,500, whatever the case is. I think it's $150 or so a month that they will reimburse you for transportation. So you definitely want to make sure wherever you're living is within that limit. They do not care if you say that you're willing to cover this on your own. They simply will not hire you. You might not even hear back from them. You'll just be wondering, hey, like, my resume was great. I was a perfect match for this job. That's probably the reason why. Again, there can be other factors, but you're just making it harder on yourself. So now that we've gotten the whole transportation thing somewhat out of the way, I want to talk about other issues with the place that you choose to live. Generally, the cheaper the rent is that they're charging, normally either the worse the location is, the older the home, or, back onto the worse the location is, the less convenient it is. So, for example, while Tokyo is a major city, and unlike other countries, Japan doesn't really have any legitimately dangerous neighborhoods. Dangerous in Japan just basically means that there's a larger Yakuza presence, which the Yakuza does literally nothing here, you guys. It's like playing, sleeping dogs without the violence. Like being in the night market in Hong Kong. I'm sorry, I know you guys are Japanese, but it's the same thing, people. Anyway, long story short, there's literally just men standing around and soliciting both foreigners and Japanese men to get them to pay for these brothels, whether they trick people and make it seem like it's something that it's not, or just openly let, hey, hookers, you wanna, have dry sex with a Japanese girl? Or they can offer you the real thing. So that's that. It's not really dangerous, but it's seen as dangerous by Japanese standards. Thus, the rent can, with emphasis on can, be lower in such areas. However, these areas generally are very populous because Japan is very small. You will seldomly live in a place where there's a very small population of people, so it won't really feel like the countryside like how you're thinking. Countryside in Japan doesn't normally mean 100 people. It's normally still dealing with hundreds of thousands of people to thousands of people. Think about countryside in China. But again, of course, there are places in Japan that are legitimate countryside areas. But the likelihood of you choosing to live somewhere like that and being able to go to school or work as a foreigner is slim to none. So what you refer to as countryside is going to be more like a suburban area. With all of that said, these places generally that are cheaper, you're going to be living in an older home that more than likely will have issues with bugs and or noise issues, such as having thin walls. If you are someone that has had problems with neighbors living in an apartment in the US, you most certainly will have the same problems here in Japan. For starts, generally cheap homes tend to attract foreigners, and while I've said this before and I hate to say it because I am a foreigner myself and I swear I'm not trying to be one of those people, but I'm just being real. I do not like living with, next to, or near foreigners. It is the worst experience in the world. It's fun at first because you're like, oh my god, I can go out and do fun foreigner things, blah blah blah. And then it quickly gets old when you realize, oh my god, this person is so aggravating. They don't shut their cabinets, they're dirty, they stink, they need to use deodorant, and you can hear your neighbors, having sex with each other. It's not a very fun experience. This is not to say that Japanese people can't and don't do the same thing, but I find that I deal with issues with foreigners a lot more than with Japanese people. Plus, it's easier to ask a Japanese person to hey, can you guys stop? They get embarrassed easily and they don't like confrontation. Whereas with the foreigner, it's like, oh, you want me to stop fucking my girl? Game on. And they'll just get louder with you. So, with that said, you will generally deal with more issues because the place is older. You will also generally have less support and or help because it's an older place. They're not going to bend over backwards trying to make changes for you. They'll simply just rent to someone else. The other issue is no one really talks about. There have literally been articles published, and to be honest, the longer you live here, the more you realize this, in which people are literally giving other Japanese, landlords advice and real estate agents advice, saying that they should rent to foreigners because basically we're easy to rent to. Now, I don't mean this in the, we don't do anything wrong type way, but because we don't have a lot of demands. If you've looked into living in Japan or housing, you've probably heard and or seen stuff about the racism here in Japan, in which it's totally legal to refuse to rent to someone based off of their religion, their gender, their sexuality, the way that they look, their disabilities, whatever, their nationality, ethnicity, race, whatever you want to call it. It's totally fair game here. So now the new thing is that they've been advising people, oh, you should rent to foreigners because they're really easy to please. You can easily, give them a shoebox house. They'll love it. They'll be willing to rent it. They'll pay more for it just because they have difficulty finding housing elsewhere, which unfortunately that is pretty much true. We do have very low standards for the housing that we want, mainly because we're so desperate just to live in Japan and just to be able to find a house in a good location. Unfortunately, most landlords will abuse this, and what they will do is they will give you a crappy place that has crappy problems. They won't tell you about these problems. They'll wait until you move in, and then they'll drag their feet when it comes to fixing stuff, or they'll find the cheapest way possible to do it, which in other words means generally your landlord, his or herself, will go in there and try to fix things themselves instead of just paying someone to handle it for you. So again, I hope you never have issues, but I have. And you do want to be very careful with that. So beyond just being given a garbage place, the other issue that you may see yourself dealing with is that you will have a lot less places around you. Generally, a place that is charging you very little, it's because there isn't a lot of stuff that's very close and nearby. Now, depending on where you're from, your idea of what's considered close is very different from Japan's. Since you will be doing a lot of, since you'll be doing a lot of walking around here, generally a place that is anything more than 10 minutes away from your home is considered as kind of a long walk. You don't want things like your train station to be more than 10 minutes walking distance away. You don't want your grocery store, the mall, etc. If your closest convenience store is 15 minutes away, girl, that is not going to last long at all. You are going to be dying, having to carry your water, your milk, your juice, your tea, carrying gallons of stuff home by yourself in your hand pretty much every day, because in Japan you have to go to the grocery store at least 2 to 3 times a week, if not every single day, because you only have a college dorm size fridge. There's not enough space to have a regular, American big, I almost picked my nose, big refrigerator. There's no space for that. And so with that said, you have limited space, not to mention that things expire here faster and you have very little freezer space. You will be limiting where you can work because most places will simply pass over you because it's like, oh, this person lives 50 minutes away. That's a pretty long commute. Or, oh, you're an hour and 10 minutes away. Yeah, you do live in Tokyo, but we're gonna go with this other chick that lives in Sendagaya over you. So again, there's no perfect location in Japan because you can be living in Shinjuku, which is a great location, but then your job can be, almost in Yokohama or, wherever where it's far away. The closer you are to your place of work, the better. And if, once again, you don't have a place of work yet, you want to go based off of wherever your school is. Generally, schools in Japan are going to be located in central areas where there are plenty of places to also work at. So keep those things in mind. And again, the less money that you're paying for your rent, especially in Tokyo, you want to consider the problems that you're going to deal with. If you have a phobia of bugs like how I do, generally speaking, the lower the rent is, the more problems you're going to have at your place. Either things are going to start breaking and stop working, such as your stove, you might have faulty lighting, whatever. You might not have a newer compact system, or not compact system, but whatever garbage system, so to speak. For example, certain places have it where you can put out your garbage any day of the week, which you might not think much of, but oh, trust me, in Japan it does matter. In other places, you have to wait for select days. Well, the problem with the places where you have to wait select days to take out the trash, the longer your crap sits inside the house, the more likely you are to attract roaches. Roaches are extremely common in Japan, and so are various other large beetles and bugs and stuff that are, huge and they fly. So you do not want to do that. Secondly, if you work or you go to school early, the last thing you want is to have, like how my current place is, where you have a certain time frame. So not only do I have, for example, for me, let me make it more understandable. I can only take out my trash on Monday and Thursday. There is no, dumpster, no garbage can. I have to put my bags outside in a designated spot. I only have those 2 days. So if I miss Monday, I have to wait until Thursday, let my trash accumulate inside of my small little itty bitty apartment. That's not very fun to be smelling that crap. So it's pretty much mandatory that you buy one of those little, house air freshener thingies, and I sit it behind my trash can. You really want to, clean down your trash can on at least a weekly basis, if not every other week. Because the reality is there will be times where, you're lazy, and you're like, I don't feel like taking out the trash before I go to work, or you forget to do it, etc. Then you'll have to basically hold on to that trash for at least 2, if not 3 to 4 more days, whatever happens, and God forbid you miss 2 days in a row. That is a nightmare. You'd be amazed at how much garbage one person can accumulate, especially if you're someone that likes to cook at home. But really, even if you buy takeout or whatever, those containers still stack up in your trash can. So that is one thing that's very important. The second thing is, or not second thing, whatever thing is beyond the bugs, beyond the whole garbage situation, beyond, stuff breaking down inside of your place. You also have to consider the noise, the fact that your place might not have an elevator, which is going to suck. And when you come home with a lot of groceries, and when you're really tired and you don't feel like going upstairs anymore, or if you hurt yourself, like how I injured my back, there's all types of different things that can happen where you do not want to be living in an older building. Do all older buildings not have elevators? No, that would be a lie. Some of them do, but a lot of them do not. Generally, if the rent seems too good to be true, there's a reason why. Shoot, somebody could have even died in your place. I kid you not. So there's a lot of things they try to get over with on foreigners, where they'll charge you arm and a leg, still require a guarantor, all of these deposits, key money, etc. And you'll be living in a garbage apartment and trapped inside of a lease. So just be really, really careful. And again, there's no perfect place to really choose to live. You just really want to factor in how far away you're going to be from your job, from your school, and you really want to consider how far away you'll be from your train station and from the stores that you need the most. Beyond that, again, if for some reason you don't have a job, you don't have school, whatever, if you're living, no matter what city you're living in, we're going to use Tokyo for example, you want to live as close as you possibly can to whatever the busiest terminal station is. So in Tokyo, that would be Shinjuku Station. The closest apartment you can find to that station, it is worth every penny that you pay. I don't care if the rent is $1,200, it's worth it. If you can afford it, it's worth it. Whereas for a place like Osaka, in that case, you want to live somewhere in Kitaku, somewhere near Umeda Station, so somewhere close there. It's a central area where pretty much everything gets you there, and it's convenient. This way, even if you don't have a job, now that you're living in the central downtown area, you can easily find a job though. But again, don't get me wrong, I know I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. You want to stay within your budget. If you cannot afford to pay $800 in rent, then you don't pay for an apartment that's $800. Because if you get behind, you spend a few dollars too many, whatever, now you're behind on your rent, you have debt collectors after you, you do not want to go through that nightmare in Japan. But once again, if you do have money put aside, you can afford to do it, then yes, I most certainly do recommend trying to find the cheapest place possible within these areas. Do also keep in mind that it's not a competition, as I've said before. Nobody's going to see your apartment but you and anyone that you choose to let. In Japan, having people over your house, even dates, is extremely uncommon, and anyone who pressures you to do so is probably not really your friend, not really your boyfriend or girlfriend, and they're just using you for sex, using you for the token foreign friend to learn English. Do not let people, make you feel bad about your place. I don't care if you do have roaches. I had to deal with that before too. It is worth it to save money living in a crap place and then get your, money together and then have a really nice place that you really want versus trying to quickly have your dream life put together as soon as you come to Japan. You will learn through experience. You're gonna make mistakes. It happens. Relax. Your life does not have to be perfect from the start. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have bad housing experiences, etc. It'll only make you more appreciative of when you do find that dream apartment that you've always wanted. And again, what good does it do to pay, $1,000, $2,000 for an apartment that you never really spend any time in? You're probably going to spend most of your time at school, at work, sightseeing, dating, partying, etc. And you'll only go home to sleep and maybe watch the news for a minute, and that's going to be it. Maybe you'll cook some instant ramen. Do you really need to have a super fancy apartment for that? So again, there's no perfect location. It's all dependent on where you're going to live and or work. The ideal radius, so to speak. You want your job to be no more than 30 minutes away from your home, and that includes walking. You want everything to be within 30 minutes. If it goes beyond that, the absolute most you want is to do 45 minutes. If it's taking you more than 45 minutes to walk out your front door, get on the train, get to work, you're too far away. Not just for your job, but really for you. This will get old eventually. You'll feel tired. You'll have days where the weather is really bad, where you're feeling really bad, and you don't want to be so far away from home. But again, there's no perfect area. Pick your poison. The price is too low, seems too good to be true. It probably is, and the location is probably not good. The place is probably really small. Be sure to ask your landlord lots of questions. Do not just sign a lease and be, desperate to get any apartment. I have a separate video giving you questions to ask your landlord before you move in, or your real estate agent, I should say. I also have a blog post that gives a list of even more questions than that video has. So I highly recommend, once again, you check out my blog as well as watch my YouTube playlist on housing in Japan. I guess that's pretty much it. If you have any more specific questions about housing, you need help narrowing down where you should live, you can send me an email or leave a comment down below, and I would try my best to help you. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and if you have not already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and I have a Snapchat and Facebook page as well. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.